Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Russian counterpart have held talks today in Saudi Arabia, and a federal judge has temporarily paused the Trump administration's plan to slash funding at NIH. Good morning, I'm Corva Coleman from NPR News, and here are today's top stories. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and his Russian counterpart have held talks today. The discussions include ways to end the war in Ukraine. The meeting's taking place in Saudi Arabia. NPR's Aya Batrawi reports that nation is positioning itself as a mediator with strong ties to both countries.
The hours-long meeting and working lunch in Riyadh came after a call between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. The State Department says the meeting in Saudi Arabia, which includes Trump's national security advisor and his Mideast envoy, is a follow-up on that call to see what's possible, and was not likely to be a discussion about the details of a negotiated peace deal. Ukrainian officials are not in the Saudi meeting, but Ukraine's president is expected to visit Saudi Arabia this week after visiting the United Arab Emirates on Monday. Rubio's trip to the Mideast is his first in the region as Secretary of State. He began with a stop in Israel before meeting Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman in Riyadh on Monday. His final and next stop is the UAE. Aya Batrawi, NPR News, Dubai.
A federal judge has temporarily paused the Trump administration's plan to slash funding from the National Institutes of Health, but areas that rely on health research for their economies are concerned. Stephen Bisaha of the Gulf States Newsroom reports that includes Republican-led states that have long supported President Trump.
The University of Alabama at Birmingham is one of the top recipients of NIH funding. It's also the largest single employer in all of Alabama. The Trump administration's plan to cut billions of health research funding would include tens of millions that go to the state. Samford University economist Sarah Helmuth-McCarty says that could ripple across all parts of Alabama's economy.
UAB and the biomedical research that happens there is an essential piece of our economy. If it is disrupted, it will affect businesses, restaurants, real estate, all of it.
UAB says life-saving research into things like cancer, Alzheimer's, and heart disease are in jeopardy. For NPR News, I'm Stephen Bisaha in Birmingham.
Officials in Kentucky say last weekend's storm was one of the most damaging to ever hit the state. At least 12 people died after flash flooding, powerful winds, and thunderstorms struck. Teams are still looking for missing people. Kentucky is under a federal disaster declaration. Governor Andy Beshear says he is looking for specific aid.
What we're going to need from the federal government is approval for individual assistance that'll provide some dollars for this emergency phase, for cleaning up. But then that's up to $42,000 to help people get back on their feet. And we're going to need that system to run smoother than it has in the past. But FEMA is here with us. They are working with us, and we're grateful that they're here and for the support of the administration.
He spoke to NPR's Morning Edition. Most of Kentucky is under a winter storm warning, so are several other states from Kansas to Virginia. There are also warnings today of life-threatening cold temperatures from Montana to Texas. New York Governor Kathy Hochul says she will meet today with key leaders in New York City. They will weigh the possible ouster of Democratic Mayor Eric Adams. 4 top aides to Adams resigned yesterday. NPR's Brian Mann reports there is a growing scandal involving corruption charges against the Democratic mayor.
In a statement, Hochul said she spoke with Deputy Mayor Maria Torres Springer, one of Adams' 4 top aides leaving office. According to Hochul, that conversation left her with, quote, serious questions about the long-term future of this mayoral administration. Mayor Adams was charged by the Justice Department in September with bribery and corruption. Critics say the Trump administration shelved those charges only after Adams agreed to help a national crackdown on migrants. No governor in the last 235 years has used their authority to oust an elected mayor of New York City, but Hochul said the crisis in City Hall is troubling and cannot be ignored. Adams has denied any wrongdoing and says he won't resign. Brian Mann, NPR News, New York.
Investigators are trying to find why a Delta commuter plane overturned when it landed yesterday at the main airport for Toronto. Deborah Flint is the president and CEO of the Greater Toronto Airports Authority. She says 18 people were hurt.
We are very grateful that there was no loss of life and relatively minor injuries.
Firefighters put out a fire as passengers fled the plane. 80 people were aboard. Indigenous activist and convicted murderer Leonard Peltier is due to be released from a federal prison today in Florida. He was serving a life sentence for the killings of 2 FBI agents in 1975. Native American activists insist he is innocent. Before leaving office, former President Joe Biden commuted his sentence to home confinement. The Vatican says Pope Francis remains hospitalized in Rome. He's being treated for a polymicrobial respiratory infection. Doctors say he needs to remain on absolute rest. Vatican officials say the pontiff is in stable condition, but that his medical case is complex. This is NPR.